Okay, today we're going to start in on Chapter 1 and look at some of the differences in anatomy and physiology, which we study both in this class, and we'll talk about the differences, and then feedback systems, how our body responds to change in variables. Oops. That's not the first slide, is it? There we go. So anatomy is the scientific discipline that investigates the body's structure. So when we study like the bones, which bone, your femur and your tibia and the humerus, those are anatomy, or the muscle names and the structure. Those are all anatomy. And we study that more in the lab setting. And then the physiology is the scientific investigation of the processes or functions of the living things. So when we look at how bone is made and how bone grows, or what happens when in a muscle contraction, what happens with atoms and the ions, what makes the muscle contract. That would be physiology. We study that more in the lecture setting. So some topics of anatomy, and sometimes you have macroscopic or microscopic. And I know UNK has a class that's called gross anatomy, and it's not because it's gross. Gross is macroscopic, and so they're looking at the big structures. They're looking at anything that can be examined without a microscope. This is where UNK that class where they do the cadaver dissection, and we will go see the cadaver in the spring, but they do the cadaver dissection in that gross anatomy class. And you can study it either by regional, by area to area, so studying everything in the arm and then going to a different area. Or you can study systemic, which is from system to system, looking at just the digestive system and then just the cardiovascular system. Or you can look at go surface, so starting at the external layer and moving deeper and deeper into the organism. Kind of like an X-ray as it goes through the deeper structures. And then microscopic are structures that are seen with the microscope, and they're cytology or histology. Cytology, the prefix cyto means cell, so it's looking at the cellular anatomy, looking at cellular functions, organelles, respiration, any of the ATP synthesis. Those are all part of cytology. And then histology is the study of tissues, looking at the epithelial tissue versus connective tissue and versus muscular tissue, and how they differ and how they're the same. So some topics of the physiology, usually it reveals dynamic natures of living things, how they are able to change, and how they're different. Considers operations of specific organ systems, so it looks at cell physiology, so the processes that actually go on in the cell within that system, within that specific organ system. Neurophysiology focuses on the nervous system and how the nerves innervate the different organs, and we don't go into much detail on that. The nervous system is a difficult area, so we don't go into much detail, but we will look at some basic neurophysiology. And then cardiovascular is studying the heart and the blood vessels, and we have a chapter on that, so we'll look at that. Subjects that encompass both anatomy and physiology. So pathology, we're looking at the structure and functional changes caused by disease. So you're looking at a disease. How does it change both the function and the structures, like diabetes? How is that going to change maybe structural changes? How you have maybe problems with fingers, extremities, and functional changes like in your pancreas, how the insulin is working different or are not operational. So that's pathology. And exercise physiology is looking at the changes in the structure and function caused by exercise. So as you exercise more, what happens to the muscles? And structurally, they're growing, and then also how the function changes based on that exercise. I know exercise physiology is a major that several colleges offer, that if you want to be a PT or something like that, it's a good major to use because you're looking at movement and the human movement, which is what the PT is usually looking at also. Okay, to have a organism be considered living, there are some structural and functional organizations that have to occur. And the first is the chemical level. So that can be atoms and molecules, and atoms make up molecules. So in the picture it has atoms making up DNA. And then the cell level, all those atoms and molecules come together to create a cell, which is the functional unit of a living organism. So you can't just have molecules functioning on their own. They have to come together to make a cell in order to have some sort of function. The tissue level is when the similar cells and materials surrounding them come together and it's of tissue. Then those tissues come together to function as one in an organ. Then those organs all have function together to have a similar outcome. And all those organ systems coming together creates the organism. So in the organs that this is just a picture of all the different organs, well, not all of them, but some major organs. But they're split into systems. So let's look at those systems. The organ systems of the body, we have the integumentary system, which is your skin, hair, and the glands. The skeletal system, your bones. Muscular system is the muscles. Lymphatic system has some lymph nodes and lymph ducts that travel throughout your body. The respiratory system, your lungs and your breathing structures. The digestive system, stomach, intestines, liver, major ones. The nervous system, your brain and nerves. The endocrine system, a lot of glands that produce hormones that regulate different processes in the body. Cardiovascular system, the heart and the vessels there. The urinary system, the kidney and the bladder, and then the reproductive systems. So another thing, in order to be characterized as life, organisms have to have these characteristics. So they have to be organized, where there's specific relationships and functions between different structures. Whether you're looking at bacteria or a human organism, there has to be some sort of organization. There has to be a metabolism. They have to be able to use energy, create energy, any of those chemical reactions within the body or within the organism. Have to be able to respond, so their ability to sense change and adjust, whether that is to change and sense light, chemicals. Some like animals are able to smell and sense changes, touch. All those are responsiveness. That organism needs to be able to grow, whether or not it's increasing in size, like if it's a single cell and it's just increasing in size, or if the cells are continuing to divide and the number of cells is increasing. And there has to be some sort of development where over the lifetime of that organism there's a change, and there's two different changes that could occur. Differentiation is a change from general to specific. A stem cell is an example of that, where your stem cell can be formed into any cell that your body needs, and so that would be differentiation. Morphogenesis is the change in shape of tissues and organs. So Sometimes where muscles attach, if there's a lot of stress on that, it can change the shape of the bone. Or if you have lung cancer and you have to get part of your lung removed, your heart will actually enlarge and shift over to that side and change its shape to fill in that space. So, and then it has to be able to reproduce new cells or new organisms, whether it just divides or combines. There has to be some sort of ability to reproduce itself. Okay, and the last thing today we're going to look at is homeostasis and how your body keeps homeostasis using feedback systems. And so homeostasis is returning any variable back to a normal set point, we call it. So there's different variables that fluctuate in your body, but your body usually tries to keep them at the set point, which is the ideal normal value of a variable. So, for example, body temperature. What would be the set point for body temperature? 98.6 Fahrenheit, yep. Or blood pressure. Normal blood pressure is 120/80. So your body's trying to always keep your these variables at a set point. Now you know your body doesn't always stay at 98.6 exactly, does it? No. So it fluctuates a little bit, but your body's always trying to bring it back. And those are feedback systems. And so there's two types, a negative and positive feedback system. And there's some components. A receptor is monitoring that variable. So it's monitoring your body temperature to see whether or not, well, what it is, if it increases or not. The control center, so the receptor sends those signals up to the control center, which is your brain. And it establishes that set point, and if it needs to be changed, if it's getting higher or lower, it will send an effector, usually some sort of hormone, that can change that value of the variable again. So the stimulus is the deviation from that set point, and it's detected by the receptor. And then there's a response produced by your body, and that's produced by the effector, usually a hormone, some sort. So here is a picture of that. Oh wait, never mind. Negative feedback, and then we'll do positive feedback. So negative feedback is any deviation from the set point is made smaller. So if your body temperature increases, your body is going to try to decrease your body temperature back to the set point. So that's an example of negative feedback. Same with blood pressure. If your blood pressure starts to increase, your body will, your brain tells your heart to slow down, so that would decrease your blood pressure. And yep.
Can you go back one slide?
Yeah. Oops. Good. So here's just another picture of it. If your blood pressure, I think they're using, but if it starts to increase, there's receptors in the blood vessels that are monitoring your blood pressure. When it senses an increase, the heart rate then will decrease, resulting in a decrease of blood pressure. If the blood pressure decreases, there's a response for your heart rate to increase, increasing your blood pressure. So your body's always trying to get it back to that set point. Now during exercise, we know that blood pressure, body temperature, they just have an increased rate. So it's not going to keep that same normal resting point, and the changes are going to be a little higher, but it's going to, after you're done exercising, it will bring it back down to that set point. Okay, and then positive feedback is when a deviation occurs. The response in your body is to make that deviation even greater. So it's unusual in a normal, healthy individual to have positive feedback. A lot of times this leads away from homeostasis and can result in death. So it can be fatal if you have a positive feedback system occur unnaturally. The most common normal positive feedback is in childbirth, where contractions start weak and then they get stronger and stronger. And that's a normal positive feedback system. But if positive feedback were to occur, an example of the harmful is if you have a hemorrhage or internal bleeding of some sort and your blood pressure drops, usually your heart's going to start pumping harder to get the blood pressure to go up. You're losing more and more blood, and that would be a fatal type. And since there's less blood, the heart's ability to pump the blood decreases also. So most of the time, that is a harmful feedback system. And that's it. Any questions about the